This is Martin Bonaventry, and you're listening to the Quantum Leap Podcast.
Hello, and welcome back to the Quantum Leap Podcast. I'm Albie, and I'm so excited. Joining us today is Charles Morey. He is a 2012 Bravo Award recipient, producer, director, and artistic director, and a playwright. And you might know him from such things as Man of La Mancha with the Petersburg Players. I was there. I enjoyed it 3 nights in a row. And I just want to find out more about it and more about Charles. Hi, Charles. How you doing?
I'm well. How are you?
I'm good. I'm excited to talk to you. I think I met you one of the nights. Were you there in the run, during the run?
I was there. In fact, I was there every night during the run of Man of La Mancha.
I met you, but I had no idea who you were. I didn't do like my research before. I just like got, plane tickets, hotel and all that stuff, trying to get out there. I'm actually in Southwest Florida, and I wanted to mention that. I was doing some research on you, and I was like watching some of the videos on your website. Great website, charlesmorey.com. And it said Florida Rep Theater. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. I wonder how many of those are in Florida, because we have one by us. It's the one in Fort Myers. I'm on the next town over in Fort Myers, and I've been there often. Could we just start out randomly, like talking about how do you get involved in that one?
Well, I got a call from the artistic director down there. This is several years ago now, and they were looking for a director for 12 Angry Men, and a friend of mine was a member of the resident company there, and he'd recommended me, and so I said, sure, and went down to Fort Myers in January, which is a pretty good place to be in January, or maybe it was February, I don't remember quite, but it was the middle of winter, and I was coming down from New York or New Hampshire. I split my time between New York City and a small town in New Hampshire. And so getting to Florida in the middle of the winter sounded good. And in fact, I'm going back this fall to the same theater to direct a production of an Agatha Christie murder mystery, The Murder of Roger Ackroyd, in November at Florida Rep.
Ooh, I don't know that one. I know a few Agatha Christie's, but I don't know that one. So I won't research. So I'm surprised at who done it at the end. That's so awesome. I was going to ask you about that, because definitely next time you're in town, and this way I don't have to fly thousands of miles to see one of your productions.
Right.
Man of La Mancha, I want to get to that. I'm sure everybody wants to know more about that. But first, Charles, tell me about like how you got into the theater. When did you get bitten by that bug, and how did you go down directing and being a playwright, writing plays? That's a big deal. You did quite a bit of them, I noticed.
Yeah, I've written 12 produced plays. I've got a couple that are yet to be produced, 3 to be exact, and so, yeah, I've written 15 plays over the last, 35 years, something like that. But, well, I first got interested in the theater when I was in high school. But what I thought at that time is I would be a writer. And that was my intent. And I was not focused at that point on writing plays. I wanted to be the next great American novelist, poet, whatever. But when I was in college, I went over to the drama department and got cast in a play, and then another play, and pretty soon I got completely seduced by the performance bug, and I started out as an actor, and then went on to graduate school in New York City at Columbia University in their Master of Fine Arts in Acting program, and then started my career in New York as an actor in the late 60s, early 70s. But very quickly, I began to want to transition into directing, and I got very lucky in a couple of cases. I'd been working summers, actually, as an actor here at this theater in Peterborough, New Hampshire, the Peterborough Players, where you saw Man of La Mancha a few weeks ago. And the producer at that point was a wonderful woman by the name of Sally Stearns Brown. And for some strange reason, she trusted me and gave me the chance to direct. And I began to direct. And a couple of years later, then she did something that nobody in their right mind should have done at that particular point, which is asked me if I would be the artistic director of the theater. And this was in 1977. And the artistic director is the one who runs the artistic side of the theater. The artistic director selects the plays, hires the directors, hire the designers, kind of sets the parameters of how things are going to be produced and the schedule and all that sort of thing. And then usually he or she will direct part of the season themselves. And of course, that's the great attraction. You get to pick the plays and pick the people you want to do them with and then direct them. So I began my career as a director that way. And very quickly, for a few years, I continued to both act and direct. But by the early 80s, I was only acting very rarely. But I was directing a lot. And so I just kind of transitioned out of the acting and into directing. After, I think in 1984, I was offered a job as artistic director of the Pioneer Theater Company in Salt Lake City. And while I was still the artistic director at Peterborough as well. And for 5 years, I did both jobs, which was insane. Because I just never stopped. I was going at Pioneer, we ran a September through May season, and at Peterborough, we ran a June, July, August season. So I went for 5 years when I always had a play either in rehearsal or performance in one theater or another. And then after that 5 years, I came to my senses and said, I think I'd better, I'm not doing anybody any favors, particularly me, and I think I'd better pick one. And the Pioneer is a big theater, 1,000 seats and big budget, and of course, so I was making a much better salary there, and so I chose to do that. And after a few years there, I got a strange notion one day that I would like to do a production of The Three Musketeers, but I didn't know if there was a workable stage adaptation. So I went looking in libraries and the various licensing houses that handle plays. And I found a couple of versions which I did not care for at all. And I loved the novel, and I loved the Richard Lester movie. Or movies, The Three Musketeers and the Four Musketeers, which were produced sometime in the late 70s, early 80s, I think, might have even been earlier. And none of the stage adaptations that I found kind of had the panache and the joy and the humor of the original novel or the Lester films. And I thought, well, I'm going to take a stab at it. I'm going to try and adapt it myself, and sort of went back to my roots in the theater, and I did it. It was kind of a great act of hubris in many ways, but it turned out to be very, very successful, and got produced at a bunch of other theaters around the country, got published eventually, and then I kind of moved on from there and started writing an adaptation every few years to produce in this big theater in Utah. I did an adaptation of Dracula that again went on and had some success, an adaptation of Count of Monte Cristo, same thing, Tale of Two Cities, and The Hunchback of Notre Dame. Kind of, in a strange way, taught myself how to write plays by doing these adaptations. And of course, coming at them from the perspective of, at that point, a fairly experienced director and artistic director. So I kind of knew how to do them. And then after that, I began to branch out into writing some original plays, not adaptations, and have continued on with that while continuing a career as artistic director at Pioneer for 28 years. And when I retired from Pioneer in 2012 at age 65, my wife and I moved back to New York and bought a place in Peterborough, a town that we loved and where we had and where we met, and got kind of re-involved with the theater here. And then just about a year ago now, as the theater was kind of in trouble, and they asked me if I would step in as interim producing artistic director for a year, which is what I did. And that's how we came to do Man of La Mancha, a show that I love and a show that I thought would be great on this stage. I've directed it a couple of times before, and so I put it on the schedule. And then we got very lucky, and Scott Bakula and his wife, Chelsea Field, said, "We're interested. We'd like to do it." And I said, "Really? You sure?" In this little theater in the woods in New Hampshire. And they said, "Yep, that's exactly what we want to do." And so they came east and joined a group of actors from New York that we'd hired, and we had a great time.
That is amazing. Yeah, I love the theater. It's huge and small and intimate at the same time. I remember going on I think they have their own YouTube channel, and seeing some videos and the history about it, and it's very interesting, and it's just a beautiful theater.
Yeah, it's an old barn. And when I first started working there in 1969, it was very much just a barn. Nothing like the theater you see now. There were all the lobby didn't exist, the office spaces, the rehearsal hall didn't exist. It was just a barn with big screen doors. It was the only ventilation. There was no air conditioning. And we had 149 seats on uncomfortable folding chairs, but we had a very loyal audience. The theater was started in 1933 and is one of the oldest continuously operating theaters in the country, and an old and well-known summer theater in New England.
Was the trouble they were having due to the pandemic and being closed for a couple years?
Yeah, the pandemic certainly was a big part of it, but there were other things too. There were some bad choices made, and in terms of repertoire, and some dysfunctional personalities, but yeah, the pandemic had a lot to do with it, and that's been troublesome for essentially every theater across the country. We fortunately really turned it around this year. We increased attendance year over year from 2023 to 2024 by 85%, which is almost unheard of, but we got lucky. I chose right in terms of the plays we were doing, and people liked them, and they bought a lot of tickets. So
that's good. To jump to the end of the financial questions about the Peterborough players, did Scott have a good hand in helping out the theater staying afloat? Because like I know so many people online that I've talked to or spoken with at the events that came from all over the world, which is usually probably unusual for a small regional theater. So did having Scott and Chelsea there help out the books?
Oh yeah, it certainly did. I mean, I don't think it was decisive. I think we would have done very, very well if we'd had somebody who was unknown playing those roles. But we added 2 additional matinees in the final week of performances, and I doubt we would have been able to do that. I think we would have done well with it, but not as spectacularly well as we did. We actually did 101% of capacity because we had some obstructed view seats to sell, and I think we would have done, 95%, something like that. But I mean, it's hard to know, and certainly Scott was a huge draw. And people did come from all over the world and all around the country, which was surprising and gratifying and a lot of fun.
I noticed you directed at the Peterborough Players this past season. Also, Noises Off, right?
I did, yes.
I love that movie. I haven't been fortunate enough to see it live, but directing that must be absolutely crazy because it's nonstop the whole time.
It is crazy, and I'm a little surprised you say you love the movie because I think the movie's dreadful, to tell you the truth.
Oh, is the live
Um,
version much better?
oh yeah, I mean it's a live theater piece. It's about the theater, and it's all about the timing,
Hmm.
and one door slams, another opens, three more slam in a row, and when you see it live, there are no retakes. It's not being edited together in one way or another. It's all the actor's skill that's pulling this off. And when that show gets rolling on a stage, the laughter is nonstop, and audiences are just literally doubled over with laughter. And it's this was actually my well, let me see. I think it was my sixth production of it.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
I did it first in at Pioneer Theater Company in 1987, and it was an enormous hit for us and kind of became our signature piece. We brought it back a year later, off season during the summer. It was a huge hit. 10 years later, we brought it back again. It was a big hit. 10 years after that, we brought it back again. So every 10 years, we kind of cranked it up, and it always was a big audience favorite. And we did it here when I was running both theaters. We did it in Salt Lake City in 1987. Then I brought the entire company from that production to Peterborough to remount it that summer. Um, and it was a big hit for us here. So when I announced it for this season, people were very excited because some of the audience remembered it, and others know it and have seen it in other versions and love it. So it kicked off our season and was a big success for us to start.
That's good. That's good. So you say you haven't acted since then. When we were fortunate enough to interview Martin Bonaventri, who played the barber
Right.
in Man of La Mancha, and he was talking about how there was like no understudies and
No,
just everything happened to work out great. Like, is there ever a point where you might have to step in? Do you know all the parts, being the director and having done the production so many times?
no, no. And I can't, and I don't sing, so I couldn't step into that to be sure. Um, But no, I mean, even though I know the show very well, it's a whole different thing stepping into a role on with no rehearsal. And it's been a long time since I've been on stage, so I have no great desire to do it.
Did you have a backup plan if something happened, like if somebody just didn't show up?
Well, that just doesn't happen. You do get injuries, and there is, of course, illness that can happen. In most cases, people will try and work through that in a situation where there are no understudies. And most theaters like this do not have understudies. Um, it's a very expensive proposition to fully understudy a company. You almost double your costs. So, I mean, we did have a situation in La Mancha where one of the young women in the ensemble, she had a death in the family and she had to leave for a few days. And we were able to cover that internally. There was somebody else who could, she danced the Moorish dance. And
Okay. Was
uh,
that Abby?
no, no, it was Maria who
Okay.
was secondary in that. And but we were able to Lucy Zukaitis, who was the dance captain, and played one of the horses. Um, she was able to step in very quickly and cover everything that Maria had to do. So usually, not always, but frequently, you can cover that way. And sometimes, at Pioneer, much larger theater, we did have understudies. not always, but more often than not. We were the first regional theater in this country to do Les Miserables.
Love that
We
one.
were chosen by Cameron McIntosh specifically to do it. He gave it to us, gave us the rights first. And for that show ended up running 10 weeks. And we did have understudies and we did have replacements and we had understudies going on from time to time. And, you know, particularly with a big musical, there's always the threat of injury. If it's a big dance musical, neither La Mancha nor Les Mis are. But I remember doing a production of Chicago. Actually, that same season, we did Les Mis, and we had a couple of injuries to dancers and had to put understudies on. And, you know, I mean, it happens. But this, in summer theater, the runs are very short. You know, with this, we did 13 performances over 10 days. So you kind of cross your fingers and hope you're not going to lose anybody. And you take that calculated risk. You say, well, you know, if Scott went down with illness or an injury, we just have to cancel. There's nothing else we could do. But that didn't happen. So
luckily it all worked out.
Yeah.
Is there a big difference between directing a play and a musical?
Yes and no. I mean, first of all, when you're doing a musical, you have the added elements, of course, of music, an orchestra, but that also means you have a music director. And so they share some of the load in terms of getting the show ready. You also have a choreographer to work on the dance numbers. So La Mancha is a very integrated show in that way. I mean, it's not something you can kind of break apart and rehearse in pieces. You take an more old-fashioned musical, say My Fair Lady, where there are book scenes, there are dance scenes, and there are musical numbers. You can actually do what we call a three-ring circus. In other words, if you have three rehearsal spaces, you can have the musical director working with people in one room. You can have the choreographer working with the dancers in another room, and the director can be working with the principals on a book scene in a third room, and you maximize your time. Musicals take a lot of time to rehearse because they're complicated, and learning dance and learning music is time consuming and difficult. Learning something like Noises Off is also very time consuming and difficult, but it's different. I didn't start out directing musicals because, as I mentioned before, I'm not a singer, certainly not a dancer, and I don't read music, and I didn't really know that world. I started out as an actor in straight plays and doing a lot of classics, a lot of Shakespeare, and I'll tell you, directing a big Shakespeare, directing Hamlet is more work than directing Man of La Mancha, because you don't have all that help that you do, and it's very complex and complicated. And in a certain sense, Shakespeare is a very good preparation for directing musicals because it has scale. The verse is musical in and of itself. The soliloquies are essentially arias, they're songs. And so you come to it with that sort of in your background. And it was interesting. I mentioned Les Mis before, and that we were selected to do the American Regional Theater premiere. And I had to be approved by Cameron McIntosh, the producer of the original show, who still controlled the rights. And he told me that the reason he approved me was because I had a strong background in the classics, like Trevor Nunn, the original director of Les Mis in London and New York.
That's so nice. Yeah, we're going to see Les Mis, I think, in May here in Fort Myers. The
Uh-huh.
local traveling, the traveling troops come around. It's called Barbary Man Performing Arts Center. It's a huge place. They put on beautiful
Mhm.
productions. So I can't wait to do that. It'll be my daughter's first time seeing it, so I'm excited
Great.
for it.
Well, it's a fabulous show.
The plays you've written, I'm very interested in them. They have great titles. The one that sticks out to me the most is Christmas Trifle for Two Clowns and Miss Isabel. I love that title. That's one of those things where you see it and you're like, I need to see that. What is that one about?
Um, well, it's a three character farce, and it's very loosely based. Or the idea is taken from um, a Christmas skit, an English music hall skit, and it's about 10, 12 minutes long. And there's a video of it from the 60s, I think, that has become strangely an enormous hit and tradition in the Scandinavian countries.
Hmm.
Um, and I can't remember the exact title of it now, but basically it's 10 minutes. And what it is um, a dotty old lady and her butler. And she's holding a dinner party for all her nearest friends and relations who are all dead. And the butler plays all the parts and has to drink all their cocktails and all their wine and gets progressively drunk throughout.
I love that.
And actually, it was commissioned. And the fellow who commissioned it said, "Do you think you could do anything with this?" And I looked at it and I said, "No, I don't think so. But let me think about it." And then I thought, if I put a third character in there, somebody who didn't know the situation, who was just being introduced to it, then there'd be the potential for conflict and confusion, of course, and that's what conflict is what theater is about. And so the old butler is there and trying to introduce the new man into how to throw this dinner party, and of course they both get wildly plastered and end up passed out on the floor again. But it's very funny. It's a three character farce. 70 minutes long.
Oh, wow.
It has yet to be produced, and I keep hoping that something's going to open up for it.
It sounds hilarious. I'd love to see that live. How does that work being a playwright? Like, you have your plays written. When companies or theaters want to produce one of your plays, do they contact you and then license it? How does that work?
Well, for the plays that are not published, yes, they contact me or my agent, and then we negotiate a contract. For the plays that are published, then they contact the publishing house, who are also the licensors for it. I've sold them the rights to license it for regional theaters, stock companies, amateur groups, and that sort of thing. And then they license it, they take a cut, and they pay me the royalty. Actually, my most popular play and most successful play is a play called Laughing Stock, which was based very loosely on the Peterborough Players. It's a play about a summer theater season in kind of a failing, dysfunctional theater. And it's very, very funny. It's a backstage farce, and it, inspired in part by Noises Off. The big payoff scene is a production of Dracula that goes just disastrously awry. And if I do say so, it's really funny. And that's been produced about 300 times around the world.
Wow.
And in a very strange circumstance, is hugely popular in Russia. In fact, there are 3 productions of it running in Moscow right now.
Wow.
And the longest running one has been running since 2013. And one for about 5 years and one for about 3 years. So one 11 years, one 5 years, one 3 years so far. And then there are another, I don't know, 7 or 8 productions still going in various regional theaters in Russia. Of course, trying to get paid these days
Yeah, from Russia. Yeah.
is a little difficult, but
Yeah.
the plays just keep rambling along. So
That must be like an enormous sense of validation that, people enjoy your work so much.
well, yeah, you always want more, of course, but yeah, there is a sense of validation, and that um, people like these plays and want to do them and want to see them.
Hmm. Um, Going back to La Mancha, what was your feeling when you first heard that Scott was going to be a part of it? Like, did you go, oh my goodness?
Well, I was very intrigued when we first started talking. I did not know him personally. Um, a old friend of the theaters, Jim Whitmore Jr., is a TV director. His father, James Whitmore, started his career at this theater in 1947. And Jim has been here and worked with his father here at various times. And he directed a lot of the Quantum Leaps, and he directed a bunch of NCIS New Orleans. And he and Scott are good friends. And he gave me a call one day and said, "Have you cast Man of La Mancha?" And I said, "No, not yet." He said, "Well, I have a friend who might be interested." I said, "Well, who's that?" He said, "Scott Bakula." I went, "Oh, really? Okay. Um, well, tell him to give me a call or drop me an email if he's interested, and we'll talk." And Scott did, and not for a few weeks. So I sort of thought it went by the wayside. And Jim had told me that Scott was just the nicest guy in the world, and which is absolutely the unvarnished truth. He's one of the nicest guys you'll ever meet. Not only a wonderful actor, but an extraordinary human being, just very, very generous of himself. And this, as I think his fans know, La Mancha has been on his bucket list for a long time. He did it when he was 21 years old in an outdoor theater in St. Louis, where he grew up, and he's always wanted to do it since. And anyway, we started to talk. And, to be perfectly honest, I was a little nervous. Sometimes with Hollywood people who want to come work in a small regional theater, they start asking for things you can't do and can't give. And sometimes they will say, "Oh yes, I would love to do that. I'm on board. Believe it. I'm with you." And then a month later, they say, "Gee, I don't think I'd better leave LA right now. And I might have a pilot. There's something. So I was always kind of, well, if this works out, that could be good. And then, and if not, I'll hire an unknown, but who is a good actor out of New York." And but anyway, Scott was doing, as you probably know, a new musical called The Connector in New York.
Saw it live.
And,
It was amazing.
yeah, and I thought it was a great show and a great production. And so he invited me to come see that, and I went to see it and said, and then we got together and chatted afterwards. And then a couple of days later, he and Chelsea and I got together, and they both sang for me, which was sort of amazing. And we sat around a table and talked for about an hour, and we liked each other, and they liked what I had to say about the show and about the theater. And I was very upfront. We can't pay you what you make in Hollywood, that's to be sure. And this is a 250 seat old barn in the woods of New Hampshire, and I can tell you it's going to be a good production, but it's not Broadway. And he said, "Well, we think we might like this." And they thought about it for a week, 10 days or something. Then he gave me a call and said, "We're all in if you want us." And I said, "You bet, let's do it." So
That's
all
amazing.
happened.
That's amazing. Yeah, that was our basic thought, feeling that he just did it for the love of theater.
Yeah,
during the
he
movie.
did. He did for the love of that role and the love of doing theater and being on stage. And of course, I mean, I think the opportunity to do it with Chelsea was significant too for both of them. They both really wanted to do it together, and they were terrific together. And both of them just so generous and open, and very open to the company, to the other actors, and to the younger members of the company, our interns who were in it. Very giving of their time and attention, and never any even a whiff of kind of star, behavior or anything like that. They were just part of the company, and that's what they enjoyed about it, I think.
Scott always has seemed very kind and humble and just accommodating to all his fans. And was it out of the ordinary? Like his fans, descended on this small little town. And I noticed because I was very privileged to see 3 performances in a row, and I noticed each night Scott came out afterwards and spent time with every single person that wanted to spend time with him. Was that like out of the ordinary with so many people hanging out afterwards
Oh yeah,
versus the other production?
yeah. I mean, usually there are a few people that hang out in the lobby afterwards, but they're people who know some of the actors because they've been here for years, or and just want to say hi, and or they're friends, that sort of thing. But nothing like that. And Scott was out there every night. He'd come out after the show and sign autographs, chat with people, and then we did 2 very specific meet and greets, with photo ops and all that sort of thing. And he was very, very generous with his time to everybody. I never saw him kind of turn down anybody or say, sorry, I gotta go, I gotta move on. He was just always there.
I was lucky enough to be one at one of the talkbacks, I think they're called, where the
Uh-huh.
audience spoke to the
Yeah.
actors and stuff. Is that do you do that at the Peterborough Players with every production?
Yeah, we do it for this season we did it for one after one performance after the Sunday matinee of the first week.
Hmm. Yeah, I think that's the one I was at. I really enjoyed that. It was great to see the whole cast there and
Yeah.
yourself and everyone. Uh, can you share any stories? I mean, I know you've been in the theater for so long, but like La Mancha in particularly, did anything happen during the run that was just interesting, fun, or funny? I know one night we were there, like, um, I think it was the bucket fell down in the orchestra pit or something. Like, what
Yes, that
happened during the run that was interesting?
well, that happened. The bucket got tossed in and rolled around and went down into the orchestra pit and immediately got put back up. Um, but we didn't have much of anything kind of going wrong, and no kind of big problems. Little glitches here and there. It's live performance, so everything's always a little off. Some one night Scott sang the wrong lyric.
Oh wow.
And he went, "Oh my God, how did I do that?" But it was no. If you didn't know the show, and you wouldn't have noticed it,
Hmm.
and it didn't matter at all. But no, the show got better and better and better throughout the run. I mean, one of the things about summer stock is, we have a short rehearsal period. We have 2 weeks of rehearsal, and so when you open, you're always opening a little bit underprepared. And we opened very, very well, but it just got better and better and better each performance.
Was the casting mostly in New York City, or did were the interns from New York, or were they
The
local?
interns are all from all over, and the cast was uh, mostly from New York. One from Chicago, one from Phoenix, but who had auditioned in New York. Um, but mostly New York. We had I think a total company of 20. There were 7 interns and 13 equity actors in it, and all the equity actors were from New York, Chicago, or hired out of New York.
Hmm, very nice. Is this something you'll want to put on again at some point? Man of La Mancha?
I'd be happy to, but I don't know where. This was my 1 year coming back to run this theater.
Hmm.
When they asked me to do it, I said, I'll do it for a year. I'm 77.
Hmm.
You know, I I ran this theater for 12 years. I ran the Pioneer Theater Company for 28 years. I've done it. And in particular, running a summer theater and being the producing artistic director, which means you're pretty much running everything. It's exhausting. You know, my normal day was 9 o'clock in the morning until 10 o'clock at night. And and I had my first full day off from May 3rd until now was the Saturday of Labor Day weekend. So
Yeah, that's a lot.
I don't need to do that at my age again.
Yeah.
So I intend to keep directing plays and writing plays as long as I'm able and as long as people hire me to do it. But I do not want to run a theater again.
You mentioned the Agatha Christie play coming up, which I know my daughter and me will see, I'm sure, a few times while you're down here. I can't wait. Is there a place that people can follow you to see what your newest thing is and where to go?
Well, my website, though it's not actually, I haven't updated it really since before the summer. I don't even have this summer's stuff on it yet. But no, I don't have like a blog or something or saying you'll see me here, but I'll get that stuff up on it fairly shortly.
Right, yeah.
You just gave me a good reminder.
Beautiful website. So again, when is the Agatha Christie one? I'm just interested for my personal.
It opens November 29th, the day after Thanksgiving.
Okay. Wow. Will there be previews or anything?
There are previews on the Tuesday and Wednesday prior to Thanksgiving. Then we take Thanksgiving off, and then we open on Friday the 29th.
Awesome. Thank you so much for that information. I can't wait. I'm excited.
Yeah, and it's called the Murder of Roger Ackroyd. It's an adaptation of an early Agatha Christie Poirot mystery, and it's at Florida Repertory Theater.
That's perfect. I'm so excited. How much of a small world is that I'm going to get to go see another one of your productions? That's awesome. All right. Well, thank you so much for being part of the Quantum Leap podcast. It was awesome getting to know you, Charles.
You too. Thank you.
I really appreciate it. Okay. And for more on Charles, check out his website, charlesmorey.com, and stay tuned to the Quantum Leap podcast.
Great.
Thank you, Charles.
Thank you.